God's own country, isn't it?
The way I got interested into fashion was kind of just always been a creative kid since I was little. Always loved those little like craft kits you can get from like the Works or random little craft shops. So I've always been like a creative little bean. So my mum used to have like sewing patterns, or when I first started sewing I was kind of there like, grab every single fabric you can find, I love sewing, and being like wee with all of it and really excited. And then kind of going, I have too much and I have no time to make anything with it. I'm kind of, at the moment, stopping, unless if it's like a fabric I found at a charity shop that's like maybe like half a metre or something, and I'm like, well, I know what I could do with that, so I might as well.
I'm coming at kind of fashion in Yorkshire from a slightly different angle to some people maybe. I've been involved with York Fashion Week since 2019. I kind of learnt about it in a really weird way. I was on the bus talking to my mum, and I was moaning about how I really wanted to get into fashion and I wanted to work with a magazine or work at London Fashion Week. And a man got up and he'd written Nikki's phone number on a business card and just gave it to me as he was getting off the bus. And yeah, I just reached out to Nikki and got involved volunteering, working behind the scenes, writing blogs and things, and yeah, fell in love with York Fashion Week.
I really, because I'm a lecturer and an academic, I'm really interested in the psychology behind purchase behaviour, and I'm really interested in learning what's behind influencer marketing and what prompts people to make a purchase, and kind of there's so many academic papers on how word of mouth and influencer marketing, it's tapping into a specific consumer base and really kind of developing trust with the consumer. So I really enjoy kind of playing with that and targeting a specific customer. So I started life as a model in my late 20s and early 20s. So that gave me kind of a unique view of the fashion industry and how shoots work, and I really enjoyed kind of being immersed in the fashion industry and the creative industry, but I knew that I kind of didn't want to pursue modelling long term, purely because I just didn't see much progression in it. So I wanted to, I knew I wanted to work in the fashion industry, but kind of in a different field. So that's how I started off. And then obviously when Instagram took off, I created a profile and started showcasing my outfits on Instagram, and then I've kind of built a following from that, and then other kind of opportunities have come from that.
A lot of my inspiration it does come from art, but I can't specifically think of one. I think it's just like a multitude of things that I see or hear about or come across, whether it's other friends' works where, like, let's say it's a graphic designer, they're doing a new poster for something, and the way they've done it, like, oh, those colours look nice together, and then you might try it out in a sample and then see where that sample takes you, and from there, like, build up. But I definitely think just art, being surrounded by art and being surrounded by other creatives, you hear about little things or different artists that you might not have heard of. Or I was looking at the Rorschach test for an idea of what I was going to do my graduate collection on, and one of my friends said, oh, have you looked at the Cornelia Parker exhibition recently? She's done snake venom drawings. I think the collaboration I did with Tom Hill, where we created Airbag with all the yellow pieces about protection, was one of my proudest moments, and because there were so many people involved with it, you had so many people pick up on different things and put more ideas in, and just seeing it at the end, like on a film, with all these beautiful photographs that he took, and just to read the poetry and there were so many different, or like there was a graphic designer that made the font look like the garments. So these were pieces I made for photographer Harrison, and he wanted to shoot them in the Hollywood Hills. And when he was in LA, he got in touch with a model, and they spoke, and they both really wanted to work together. And then got her measurements, and I created these pieces, and the piece is called Tranquility, and that's what this mint color represents. And all the ruffles are to represent tranquility, and it's meant to show to do with people coming back from the war. So with the colour and the ruffles, that was why we named it that. It's actually 9 meters of fabric, and each set of ruffles, like 3 meters, ends up something like this. So it's very, very heavy. It probably doesn't look that heavy. It's very heavy, and then these are long, like ribbons that you can tie into a bow for a wrap skirt. So because I'd never met the model, and yes, I had her sizings, but it was much easier that I made it adjustable just in case, I don't know, she put on a bit of weight or lost some weight. And the same with the back. So the back of this top has the same adjustable ties around the back, and it makes it easier so that if they change sizes or they lose weight, put on weight, or just it gets like a bit hot and you don't want to be like suffocated. So that's why.
I found that when I was really interested in fashion journalism, I thought that that might be something that I was going to go into. Then that was a little bit more competitive. Like, you get a real kind of like, oh no, like, am I going to be able to be paid for this work? Like, is this a realistic like job opportunity? And it did feel like a little bit like, oh no, like we're all kind of looking for the same jobs, and like in a university atmosphere, like a lot of people that I work with at Hard Magazine were going on to do like fantastic things.
I got into doing fashion I was part of this networking group locally in York on Facebook, and then one day somebody said, are there any makeup artists free to do this film? It turns out it was a promotional film for York Fashion Week, and that was great for me because that was my way in.
My father, he used to be a tailor for a period of his life, and it's always been a passion of his. And then when I was growing up, he used to tell me a lot about it, and it was just fascinating. Yeah, it was the little things that started it off, and then continued to do it for A-level. So when I was doing GCSEs, I'd go home and I'd like talk to my father and be like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and he'd be like, oh, have you thought of doing it this way? And he'd show me how to like do buttonholes by hand, because obviously he was taught in a specific way rather than how we'd taught where you just put your fabric under the machine and you get your hole. It all started because of this fashion show at school, and I was like, this is definitely something I'd like to continue more, because I really enjoy it. I like the way that, like, for art, the like blank canvas is your starting point. For fashion, it's just the body and the structure, and you can go as far out of the body or tight to the body as you want, and it's the freedom to just, yeah, create a wearable sculpture of something.
For me, once it actually gets to the shows, it's brilliant. Like, it's absolutely chaotic, and it's not from bad organisation, but it is. You've got so many people, you've got so many models, and you've got designers all telling you different things, and you've got big teams of hair and makeup artists, but you know, that's really exciting.
My absolute favourite moment in York Fashion Week and Fashion in Yorkshire was when I was behind the scenes of one of the independent runways in April this year for Fashion Week. And it was kind of the end, towards the end, everyone was getting ready, there were models everywhere, and just kind of as everything had stopped, just hearing the claps and everybody screaming from when we were behind the scenes, and they were getting to see all of the hard work that we'd put together, the models that we'd spent hours kind of making up, making sure that they walked perfectly, hours and hours of run-throughs. That kind of just made it all worth it to just hear everyone really enjoying it.
And I was quite lucky because at my school we had quite a good connection to Tatler, and so they put a fashion show on, and it's the press was done by Tatler, which sort of sparked me to want to do more, and it was good. I really enjoyed it.
I've always been a child that loves history, loves learning about stuff, but Victorian era has always been quite one that pops out the most. So there is 2 collections behind me. So these are my college work. This one and the red one were both themed around my interpretation of the Victorian era. So I went to multiple different museums around Yorkshire and looked at the Victorian side of how they would make garments, maybe how would they sew, what fabrics would they kind of use. I went to the one of a miller's factory and actually saw them making the twine that goes into their wool fabrics, and that went into my decision of what I wanted to make my clothes.
One of my moments where it wasn't a big setback, making my industrial nature rusted coat, was when I cut all the pieces out of the wool, and I started rolling them up with the wire wool and the vinegar and keeping them warm so they started creating rust. And while I was keeping them warm to make the chemical reaction go quicker, it actually shrunk the wool. So when I went to go sew the 2 pieces to the hood, it had shrunk half of the hood, and so I had half of the head really big, and I ended up having to spend a couple of hours stretching out on the steam press, going back and forth. And if you feel the rusted parts to the bits that haven't been touched, they feel very different, and I'm actually really lucky.
And I think the most challenging part for me is organising the hair and makeup teams, because you've got, a few different days that you're trying to do the shows for, and then it's finding the hair and makeup artists that are available, because we're all busy, we're all doing all different work, so it's kind of, you need about 7 or 8 people in your team, so it's that you sort of have to keep messaging everybody around, and then people will message you a couple of days before saying, I'm really, really sorry, but I've got this film job I've got to do. So then all of a sudden you're 1 person down, and then somebody else will be sick, and then you're all the time thinking, I've got 50, 60 models today and we don't have enough people. So it's a little bit stressful like that, because you're continuously just trying to reach out to people and hope they're going to be there. And it always works out in the end, and there's always people that really want to do it. So it does work out in the end, but I think a few weeks before it is that moment of, are we going to have enough people?
Biggest challenge so far has with my own stuff, I've never been able to push myself to do stuff by myself, because I've always been either in a course, or I have a tutor, or I have a module. So with them it's kind of you just got to get on with them and get them done sort of thing. With these pieces was trying to figure out how to get So I wanted people to look at these two garments in particular and go, that is based on Victorian. I know they might not be as much as I wish they were, but that's something I will learn from and will try and improve and interpretate more in my work. But with these two pieces, it was more get the thought across, look at different pieces, because these dress pieces are actually made by moulaged patterns. So using a mannequin that was closest to my size, taping where I wanted the pattern to actually lay and form on the body, and just letting it naturally flow onto it. Because I know you normally get your block and then you do it and then you put it on, but I'm a very figure out what shapes I want on the body, then put the fabric on and see where the fabric is going to let me mould it, because I'd rather it look natural than a bit like boxy. One of the biggest one is mental health. Keeping pushing and not letting like my mental health affect my work, because I do have like depression, anxiety, social anxiety, so it is hard to be like, okay, we're gonna go out and do this sometimes. Sometimes I have to like plan what I'm gonna do, see how it goes sort of thing. I know I have the skills, I know I can do stuff, I know I can make stuff from scratch. It's just having the confidence within myself to go, okay, you want to do this, go out there and push yourself to do it then. That's the like bit I need to get used to doing, because that's probably the most hard thing I need to get past sort of thing. It's just keeping motivated, keeping positive and being kind to myself. If something does go wrong or doesn't go the way I thought it was, instead of putting myself down with it, try and be more like, well, what can I learn from it? How can I improve from it? And how can I do it better next time?
My favourite runway ever was in April as well of this year. We collaborated with Warpaint, which is an absolutely incredible brand who've just like rebranded themselves as Untold, and they had come together and made this brand of accessible fashion to kind of bring to light breast cancer awareness and like accessible clothing as well. And they did the most incredible runway in April, and at the end I did have a little cry, well, not such a little cry, a big cry, when they did a big reveal. And one of the women, because they were all kind of models that the designers knew, she came out, I'm gonna cry again, she came out with a t-shirt on that had like a cutout which showed her mastectomy scars, and it was all about her experience of breast cancer. And I just thought that that was like the most touching moment, and the audience reaction to it and how everybody felt afterwards. Everybody was in bits. They were crying backstage because of the story that this brand had told. I just thought that made it all worth it. All the like sleepless nights, the stress of the days at Fashion Week, it kind of was so appreciated, and you could see that it meant so much to people, and kind of getting the awareness of the brand out and getting to work with such incredible creatives just meant the world to me. So that
But in terms of like dealing with stress, I try and keep my work life and to university, anything to do with fashion, and like my social life slightly separate. So if I am having a bad day at work, I can just throw myself in to like my social life and have fun doing other things and just forgetting about work, or vice versa. Let's say if I'm not having a very nice time with my friends or something, or something's come up, I can just throw myself into my work and produce good work, hopefully. Something that I've done all my life, even when at school, the escape to do with art as a whole has always been so helpful for me. I've been in like my darkest places, and just going to the studios and like creating, either even back then when it's like, if it's painting, drawing, or making clothes, it's always been an escape, which has been so lovely.
And I've lived here my whole life, and it's just somewhere that offers so much. You're in the centre of the country, and it's so creative. And I often think that people from Yorkshire, or anywhere kind of in the north really, really push and strive to make it because they haven't got the opportunities that people in London have. So I often feel like they've got a lot of grit and a lot of drive.
It was kind of just keeping that aspect of I can do it and I will do it and I will push to do it and I will learn how to do everything I want to do. And it's kind of just keeping that positive vibe. Even through bad days, I can look back at it and be like, well, I can have one bad day, but I can make that.
I grew up in London, so coming to Yorkshire is very different. And it's just nice to see the creative aspect here rather than London. And it sparked new ideas and I think meeting loads of different creatives through all different places, whether it's music, film, fashion, has all helped my creative journey.
I would say my experience from working in York, I think it's because it's a smaller city. I guess that we all get to know each other really well. So, when you do Fashion Week, in Yorkshire, you kind of know all of not all of the models because we get new models each year, but you will recognise models, you'll recognise stylists and photographers, and it feels like a real kind of more friendly, I think, closer, just because we all know each other. So
it's kind of this connotation that if you move to London, you're going to have all of these experiences readily available in London to you. And it's true, there's a lot of head offices, there's a lot of people and companies there. But I think that it is more difficult to get your name out there. But I think, especially with the development of the internet and social media, it's really connecting. Obviously, there's a lot more work that needs to be done with that. A bit like York Fashion Week, we've forged this community, and we're all really loyal to each other, and we do things for each other, and we're always there for each other because we know how difficult it is to forge this community up north. Whereas I think because it's much larger, it is easier because there is more people, but it comes with its own challenges. Obviously, living there is expensive. Everything seems to be more expensive in London. Not that it's much cheaper at the minute here, but I just feel like it's you have to work a bit harder for it, but it is achievable to get your name out there up in the north.
I'd say it was unexpected, the fashion scene in Yorkshire. It's you'd expect it to be non-existent or really small. Kind of just beautiful how everyone comes together, and I feel like it's much more.
And it was actually a collaboration between about 6 of us, and I created these yellow, puffy garments and had aeroplane seat belts on and clips. And this boy called Grace Glover wrote poetry about protecting yourselves, and there was a videographer called Beth, and she did the film for it, and in the film she wanted to address the fact that you can, when you're meeting, let's say, even someone you love or you like in a day-to-day basis, you can put up a facade and not want to take your barriers down because you're protecting yourself. And whether you're...
Do you feel like there's fewer opportunities and jobs if you want to live in the Yorkshire, which I do want to stay here, so I guess there's a little bit of pressure. But then the more that I've settled into it and found the scene a little bit more, the more I've kind of gone, okay, I've got time to kind of explore what I enjoy, and maybe that isn't what I first thought that it would be.
In London, there's more opportunities for catwalk shows, more opportunities for showrooms, people to kind of see your work. But so inevitably, you can use social media to a certain point where you can showcase what you're offering. But if you want people to see your product, in person or up close, then it would be something that you would need to take down to London to get, access to more people. But I think the fact that social media is allowing people to, wherever they are in the world, to see what you're doing, then I think that's great. It's kind of, like I said, it's closed the gap between the north and the south. I think that the more kind of grassroots creative fashion weeks such as York Fashion Week, for example, the more that northern cities promote these and people get to know about them, the more people that, you know, will recognise northern cities as a host of really creative people, and it's not just London that have creative people. And just because you don't want to live in London doesn't make you any less creative or you know, talented. And I would hope that that would only increase as time goes on, really, because you know, London isn't the centre of the world. You know, there are pockets of really creative people in different cities in the north, and Yorkshire especially has got a really great creative scene, which I'm really excited to be part of. So I would hope that that would increase and get more kind of recognition as time goes on.
Where do I actually want to go? Because I feel like that's always been quite a big looming question, because when you get to like your end days of school, people are always like, well, you got to know where you want to go. Like, you got to know which job you're going into. And it's
At the moment, I'm purely focusing on the graduate collection, because after that, I'm not sure what direction I'm going to go into, whether I'm going to try and get a job as like an intern or start up my own fashion label from the very beginning. But I need to work that out first.
You know, you got sort of get to see the students that are helping backstage, and you know, it's not actually their work. They're just helping another designer, and then you get to see them only sort of 6 months later actually having their own show. So that's really lovely to see. I'm
thinking I may go abroad because London's too expensive. I've really enjoyed my time in Leeds. But I've enjoyed it as a student and learning and meeting loads of the creatives.
I mean, it's the dream to move full-time into fashion, isn't it? Like, everybody wants to do it. I hope so one day. I think I'm still kind of figuring out exactly where I'd fit. Is that in a marketing kind of perspective and like atmosphere, maybe?
Staying in Leeds is definitely on the table because I've loved being in the north, and it's just full of creatives.
So I'm kind of exploring other options at the minute, but I just really love that I can still kind of make a big contribution and feel really proud of myself and still feel like I'm still active in fashion.
I feel like we've got everything we need up here, and I think that especially in the last 5 years or so, we're really striving a creative community in Yorkshire, and I'm hoping that that's only going to continue, you know, as time goes on. Well, it's God's own country, isn't it?